In a world of Johnnies, Timmies, and Spikes, we must all arrive at the win condition.
Hello again and welcome back to the Win Condition podcast, where we talk all things Magic the Gathering. My name is Sean, I'm your host. I'm joined by my co-host Greg. How's it going, Greg?
Good morning, guys. Doing well.
Actually recording in the morning for the first time. Love it. I'm all energized, got my coffee, I'm ready to go.
I didn't get coffee. I should have gotten coffee.
And happy Thanksgiving, by the way.
Happy Thanksgiving. And to all our listeners, too.
We are recording on a Thursday on Thanksgiving, so we have a lot to be thankful for, including the fact that this show is brought to you by Flipside Gaming at flipsidegaming.com, where you can go and order Magic singles, sealed product, and any order that you have over $10, be sure to use that promo code WINCONDITION in all caps to save 10% off of your purchase. Orders over $100, you get free shipping, and all proceeds will help fund future show giveaways. So we're definitely thankful for that, but we're also thankful for some brand new news and announcements we got this last week. So let's head on over to As Foretold.
Are you going to put a lore counter on that?
Absolutely, and then I'm going to proliferate.
Nice. Oh, man, proliferation. So much fun.
All right, so Greg, we got some news and announcements. Let us know what we're in for.
Well, first I got a retraction from last week and the week before and possibly the week before that. I was wrong on the release date of Explorers of Ixalan.
What?
It is Black Friday.
Okay.
Sorry.
So we got to wait till tomorrow for it to come out, but you'll probably be listening to this after the fact, so it will already be out.
Yay. Go get your copy.
Go out and explore Ixalan.
Otherwise, we still have our Black Friday promotion being opened up to all Magic boxes.
So when you open any standard legal box of Magic, you will get that treasure chest packet. Awesome.
Then we did get the full spoiler for Unstable.
Yep.
I was really proved wrong. They only gave us a couple legendaries in some of the colors, but Black Red got everything.
Yeah. Some pretty cool things, though.
I hear you like X.
X is amazing.
Much better than any V.
I'm definitely going to be playing with X, regardless if my opponents want me to or not. Effects like any send triplets or anything that allows you to play cards from your opponent's hands. I am such a fan of that.
So Villainous Wealth?
Villainous Wealth.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
I've done that for 40.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah. Other news and announcements, of course. We do have the MTG Arena closed beta. Yes, that means if you're a part of the closed beta, not the alpha beta, or the closed alpha, sorry, you should be getting an email soon because that starts December 4th. That is really cool because if you haven't seen any of the live streams, haven't looked at any of this, it looks great. I mean, they might be running off an engine that looks exactly like Hearthstone, but it's exactly what Magic's been needing for a long time.
I mean, you look at the success of Hearthstone, why not try to model your product after it?
Exactly,
right?
Yeah.
It's visually appealing, it's pretty fast moving, and it incorporates all the aspects of Magic rules into a game that's, we will obviously be able to pick it up and probably play it no problem at all. But with the proper tutorials upon its official release, I think that people who don't even know how to play Magic can probably pick it up as easily as they did off of Duels of the Planeswalkers.
Agreed. It's pretty exciting, so can't wait for that. I think that's the further extent of our news and announcements.
Well, let's get into the meat and potato of our episode. A couple of days ago, we put a poll up on Twitter asking which character from the Magic multiverse you would like us to talk about and go over the lore. Well, for the first time in one of our polls, we had a tie.
Dead
a
heat.
Straight up tie. So, fortunately, both of these characters' stories actually tie into each other quite nicely. But we are going to pick one and run with it. And the story that we are going to bring to you currently is the story of Teferi of Jamura.
Mm-hmm. And then, did you tell them who the other one was that won?
Oh, yeah, it was a tie between Teferi and Karn.
So, we decided as a better way, we could start with Teferi because guess what? His story starts before Karn, although it doesn't. God, I hate time streams. But, Karn's story continues on way past Teferi here, so we decided to do it that way, just in the favor of story.
Right, and also with the printing of Teferi's Protection, a lot of people are excited about Teferi and phasing and knowing where it all comes from, so we will do our best to bring all that to you today.
Mm-hmm.
So before we get too carried away, let's head on over to Lore Corner. Gosh. All right. Well, before we get into Teferi's actual story, Greg, you wanted to kind of set the stage for us.
I did. So, Teferi's birth and life happens mainly on Dominaria, which we know as the center of the multiverse of magic, a realm currently protected by Urza.
Which is where we will return next year.
Oh, God, we're so excited. We've gotten new art. Just so exciting. So, the continent of Dominaria is rich in mana. I'm talking like Zendikar double fold. Everybody wants a piece. The Phyrexians want to return. Nicol Bolas wants it. It's really hard to say if there's anybody that doesn't want it if they know about it. I mean, we know Ajani's actually been here. Anyhow, a lot of different things have happened here, and the setting for Teferi's story starts after the founding of the Tolarian Academy in Dominaria, and this is a culmination of Urza trying to prepare Dominaria and the mages of Dominaria for the Phyrexian invasion that's coming. Now, we don't really see the Phyrexian invasion until later on, but there are small incursions from them that they have to deal with. I mean, they're just coming through planar portals, they're coming through different rifts, and later on in Teferi's story, we're going to have the Wrathy overlay, which is where the created plane by the Phyrexians' wrath gets overlaid into Dominaria, and that starts the real invasion. And we'll get into that a little bit later.
And you mentioned Urza's ultimate plan on developing students through this academy.
I did. His ultimate plan, is we haven't talked about because Urza, is he's trying to develop a ability that's not like planeswalking, but it is. But he's able to travel through time. As we know, planeswalking is always linear and always forward, so it's not like you're able to move forward or backwards in time, but he wanted to defeat the Phyrexians without having anybody die, because he was so tired of the death.
Yes.
So he decided he would create time travel to be able to go back in time, defeat the Phyrexians before they ever started, and never have to deal with them.
And we know that time travel sets are always, clear and concise and easy to understand.
I know,
right?
Sean. So,
okay.
What it's coming down to is that there's going to be some interesting things with the time streams that Teferi's going to deal with, and ultimately Urza is going to abandon time travel and go to the Bloodlines project.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And Teferi has been present in Magic's history, beginning in the set of Mirage, and has been present all the way through the set Future Sight.
Whoa. You sure he hasn't been present until Commander 2017?
Okay, Commander 2017, sure. But he definitely spans quite a large period of Magic's history.
Sure does.
All right, so when we first meet Teferi is from Jamura, and he enrolled as a student in the Tolarian Academy, where he met Jwara, Karn, and Baron, And in the beginning, he wasn't necessarily the nicest kid. Ultimately, he did befriend them and they became his best friends, but he was a little bit disruptive. So he would be constantly playing practical jokes on people and otherwise just being kind of a nuisance. But he did definitely mature over time, but that came over quite a while.
Yeah.
So later on, after his teachings and his learnings at the academy, the Phyrexians attacked, and Teferi and Jwara were killed. Well, we can't have that. So Urza, in his time-traveling escapades, decides to send himself and Karn, or no, he sends Karn, I'm sorry, back in time to prevent the attack. And Karn was successful. But the time machine that they used to send him back overheated, causing a massive explosion that killed almost everybody. And it disrupted the time stream of Talaria, creating all kinds of time bubbles. Some were progressing in time at an extremely rapid rate. Others were moving at a next to standstill pace. But Teferi survived, but he was caught in a slow time bubble for many, many years. And Jwara apparently saw the explosion and saw Teferi caught in a bubble and that it was all on fire and exploded. So she decides, oh my gosh, I need to help him. I'm going to throw this wet blanket to help extinguish the fire. Well, she throws the blanket into the time bubble, and Teferi receives that blanket 5 years later, and the blanket helps put out the fire on his clothes.
Yeah.
So after Karn, Baron, and Urza returned and rebuilt the academy, Teferi's still caught in his time bubble, Jwara fell into a coma. And then she awoke 10 years later and discovered a way to free Teferi. So she constructed a machine that uses the water of Talaria to create a portal between the normal time zone and Teferi's bubble. It was only a prototype, but Karn and Urza were able to pass through and pull Teferi out. And as a repercussion of this, Teferi felt a little depressed and removed, as everyone he'd known, as well as the land that he was from, had pretty much aged 20 years. 20 years had gone by, and that's a lot of time.
Sure
and
is.
It essentially, happened to Teferi in the blink of an eye. I mean, all he saw was an explosion. Here's a blanket. I'm going to put out this fire, and I'm being yanked back out. And all of a sudden, everyone's 20 years older.
Yeah. Essentially, 5 minutes is what happened to him.
Yeah. So, but shortly after that, reuniting with his friends, things return to normal, and he is back to his old ways. A little while later, he was told by Urza that he should accompany Jwara to her homeland of Shiv, where the two worked on the Thran mana rig that can produce power stones needed to fuel the artifacts Urza built to battle the Phyrexians. I mean, ultimately, this is all just in preparation to battle those nasty Phyrexians.
Mm-hmm.
And although there's been an age difference between Teferi and Jwara, some romantic feelings start to bubble up between the two of them.
Remember, Talarian Academy people could care less about time. They understand it.
Time's sort of this little, speed bump that you can get over. It's no real big problem.
Yeah.
So Teferi stayed pretty involved with Urza in their preparations for the battle against Phyrexia. He helped out with a couple other battles, like the battle for Sarah's realm. But after a while, he actually became royalty. He became the royal mage of his homeland of Zalfir. So he was became a protector of the region, and his relationship with Jwara kind of, faded a little bit. We're not too sure about what happened. Mm-hmm. But he did befriend another person named Joel Rael, but this never became more of a friendship. She was kind of an inhabitant of the jungle, didn't really like civilization, so their encounter was kind of brief.
Then, after we leave his early years, we move into a time more separated on his home continent of Jamura. And at some point during all his fighting and his early years and this, he had became a planeswalker himself. Now, there's no ultimate point where it was said, but at this time he started to feel like, I need to see the multiverse. There's no way that I can be stuck here on Dominaria. So he created the guild structure for Zalfir to aid his country in absence. So that's why there is Civic, Shaper, Shadow, Armor, and Granger Guild. More information on them in a separate, possibly. And essentially is these 5 guilds that came together to perform all the necessary tasks for Zalfir to continue moving forward. So at that time, he decided, I'm going to go wander the plains now. I don't need to be here to rule my people. I don't need to take care of them. So, at the time he returns, he found the continent on the brink of war. Southern Zalfir had split off. Femerif had a problem, or Zalfir split off and became Femerif. Their churches didn't agree with the Shadow Guild being in control of the dead bodies. They had found gold in the mountains. Then the Susquehanna invaded the dwarves, taking their gold. The dwarves hated Femerif and harvesting the gold, so they went down to the south. So because of that, Zalfir felt cheated out of the rightful portion of the gold because they were getting extra gold in different areas. So Teferi was there and tracked down and tutored a capable girl of royal descent, and that was Queen Yormeba. Yormeba? Yormeba. That's funny to say. And she brought peace to the nation, but failed to unify it. Tired of the petty squabbles of his people, Teferi left with a group of trusted advisors, sages, artificers, and sorcerers, and sailed for a hidden realm in the Chaza Isles, where Teferi wanted to manipulate time to make it easier to summon creatures. The experiments met with limited success, but after years of trial and error, Teferi realized that the process was inherently unstable, just like time. But then, however, the damage was done. The earliest experiments of Teferi had been clumsy and had damaged the temporal balance. Teferi attempted to correct the problems by unleashing a blast of mana to repair the hole in the stream. Although he had anticipated danger, he did not anticipate the results of his cure. The unleashed mana burned into all plants, animals, and buildings on the isle. Instantly, everything but the bare rock of the island phased out of existence. Ooh. After several years, Teferi's Isle returned. For a long time, its people were unaware that any time had passed. But when one of Jor-El's dragons attacked the isle, nice person he found, right?
Yeah.
They began to realize something was terribly wrong. Teferi did some research and discovered that they had been absent from time for quite a while, and that his cure for the timeline had indirectly caused a great war on the mainland. Butterfly effect, somebody? The energy surge had attracted 3 powerful mages. The first was Mangara, a wise man from Corondor, who was versed in politics and had been attracted out of curiosity. The second was Teferi's old friend, Jor-El, coming to see what happened to her friend. The last one was Kervek of Urborg,
Yes.
who wondered if he could use the power for his own gain. There's that black black magic. After realizing that there was nothing on the island but bare rock, the 3 moved to the mainland to monitor it from a more comfortable place. Mangara involved himself in local politics, and with his brilliant diplomacy, solved the struggles between countries and managed to put himself in the position of de facto ruler. A jealous Kervek manipulated the xenophobic Jarrell into joining his side, and the 2 of them had amassed an army. After imprisoning Mangara in an amber prison, they declared war on the 3 nations. Is that a Jund color? I'm pretty sure that was black, red, green.
I think so, and I just think it's interesting that Teferi kind of like went to this isle and was doing some experiments, and then in just this explosion of energy and mana, caused everything to just disappear.
Mm-hmm.
But in doing so, kind of sent out the signal that attracted all these other mages to this area. And then as soon as they get there, they're like, guys, there's nothing here.
Yep.
What's going on? And then their story ensues. But yeah,
Okay.
I just find that funny.
So, unable to interfere directly with the war because of his need to monitor and reconstruct the timelines, Teferi aided the defenders with visions and sometimes helped empower their spells. However, during the remainder of the war, he remained at the sidelines. Still, he felt tremendous guilt over his role in causing the conflict. After Jor-El had defected to the defenders and Kervek had been defeated, Teferi remained a recluse in the Chaza Islands and gave up manipulating with time. Teferi later appeared during the Planeswalkers' war on Corondor to save Daria from an Amber prison.
Well,
Yeah,
that sounds pretty exciting. Karavak is a pretty nasty guy.
yeah, he is. I hate his card.
Well, I love it. One of my favorite commanders
Always will
of all
kill
time.
Kill it,
Oh,
always.
Yeah. All right, so he's done his experimentations. We know that he's incredibly powerful. And,
Yeah, I mean, being able to aid mages in a war while he's pretty much like continents away, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah. And you mentioned just real briefly one of the lines is Teferi aided the defenders with visions. Well, I mean, this is directly related to the set Visions from way back in the day, as well as Mirage, where he was, originally from. I mean, you got the phasing mechanic very prevalent in those sets, and as old as they are, this Magic timeline and story spans many thousands and thousands of years. But yeah, it's just so cool to see all these cards that we used to play with back when we were in junior high school relating to the story that's even tied into the most recent sets that are coming out today.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, so shortly prior to the Phyrexian invasion, Keld attacked Jamura. So Keld is kind of this nation of barbarians and, just really...
Would you say they might be like Spartans?
They might be like Spartans. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you've seen cards like Keldan Warlord, just big, brutish people, and warriors just wanting to, conquer and dominate. But anyway, so they attacked, and then for reasons unknown, Teferi stayed out of the war until the last moment when he defeated the Keldans. So just kind of like, wait for it, boom, you're dead.
Fingernail flick.
There you go. So they actually, in this ensuing battle, they actually helped Teferi realize that he didn't want to be a pawn in Urza's plans to fight Phyrexia anymore, and began to devise an alternative. Maybe not a pawn, maybe like a rook. He is pretty powerful, but still, I mean, ultimately...
no, maybe not a bishop?
Oh, maybe, maybe, but, because, diagonally, traveling through dimensions? No,
Ooh.
But, he ultimately was a piece in Urza's whole plan to fight the Phyrexians. I mean, he loves his nation. He's a royal mage, a protector, and he doesn't want to be used as just this piece in Urza's fight against the Phyrexians. Yes, they're dangerous, but ultimately he wants to protect his people. So when the invasion began and a portal opened over the sky in Zalfir, Teferi convinced Urza to join him in teleporting in and out of the portals with him, overloading them. Well, Teferi told his former tutor that he had a plan to use the resulting energy, but when Urza found out what this plan was, he was not happy about it, not one bit. So Teferi weaved it into one gigantic phasing spell that removed northwestern Jamura and the part of Shiv that Jwara stayed on from the time stream to save them from the horrendous attack of the Phyrexians. Mm-hmm. This is seen in the card Teferi's Protection. He just uses his immense power and zaps all these places out of, well, not out of existence, but phases them out. We don't want to get into a rules conversation about what phasing is right now, but a furious Urza ordered Teferi to stop, for this action would remove many powerful allies from the time stream and his ultimate plan. But it was too late.
It had happened.
Yep. Vanished. Just gone. They're like, peace, we're out. And Urza's like, dang. All that I worked for is now gone. Well, looks like I got to go work on something else now, which will be covered much, 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 much later.
Yeah.
Anyway, so 100 years later, after Teferi phases these places out, the goddess Corona, as seen in the card, Corona, false god, was looking for beings like herself, just kind of chilling, walking around, a decimated Dominaria. And when doing so, she found Teferi and pulled him back into the normal time stream. And although he couldn't help her, he did get to see Dominaria again and realized the Phyrexians had been defeated. Also, the fact that the plane had been wiped out.
Yeah.
He left, contemplating whether it was time to bring back the phased out lands. So,
So yeah, kind of cool.
oh yeah.
All right, so continuing on into the story, we've got 300 years after the apocalypse. Teferi and Joyer return to Dominaria in an effort to return Zalfir and Shiv safely to their home plane. Teferi was terrified to find that Dominaria was almost completely barren of mana. Barren glory, anybody? After consulting Freyles, Teferi was shocked to learn that he was reportedly seen speaking with Corona nearly 200 years ago. Teferi apparently has no knowledge of the meeting, which casts doubt on whether or not the gathering did in fact take place. Or was it a mental gathering? At this time, Teferi allied with Rada, a Kaldan half-elf that was a part of the Corona, and Venser, an Urborg artificer.
Venser
is awesome. In an effort to permanently close the time distortions that had gathered at several key locations of Dominaria. After losing a battle against Nicol
What?
Nicol and Dominaria, kind of a thing, Teferi had given up his powers as a planeswalker to seal the time rift over Shiv. Now, at this time, there was a lot more that happened with Nicol as a matter of fact, Teferi is forced into a time rift, uses Venser's Planeswalker Spark to get out of it, and then has his body torn asunder.
This is all before, or this is all when planeswalkers were godlike creatures or characters. So the fact that he is, beheaded doesn't necessarily mean that he is in fact dead.
Yeah. So he essentially rebuilds his body after Nicol Bolas planeswalks away, understanding that there's a imminent threat to the multiverse in these time rifts.
Right. Well, Teferi convinces him, or at least enlightens him, on the fact that the multiverse is on the brink of utter collapse, which, causes Nicol Bolas to be like, oh, crap, I got to go do stuff.
Yep.
So then he leaves.
So he leaves and does stuff. And it is at this time that they seal the rift of the time rifts on Dominaria, thus changing planeswalkers forever.
This event is known as
the Mending. Yeah.
The Mending.
Yeah.
Yep.
We still haven't gotten a card for this.
Nope. So we leave the end of the known story of Teferi. He is on Dominaria. He has lost his Planeswalker Spark for now, and he is mortal. And Shiv and, was it Talaria or Zalfir?
Zalfir.
Have been brought back to normal time on Dominaria. So, interesting character. Very, very convoluted story, but very, very interesting. As we said before, the concept of time and time travel is a little bit wonky. It can get a little bit hard to follow, but
especially when it's not in a solid set. We're looking at time travel over a bunch of different sets, and the existence of areas being phased away from time streams so that they can come back later. It really kind of messes with the mind.
Right. So what we also wanted to do was, given Magic's rich history and amazing art, we wanted to go over some
cards that you play with interact with the story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. We have Teferi, Mage of Zalfir. So this is the 5-drop 2/4 flash that makes it so that instant and sorcery spells your opponent's cast are at sorcery speed, and that people can't cast spells on your turn. This is a lock card with other cards. It's an unfun card, but hey, you know what? It's really strong. This was the original template for creating planeswalkers in the time spiral block. This and Jaya Ballard shared it. Preliminary tries.
Where they have the multiple abilities
on
legendary creature cards.
Yeah, it was really cool. I think it worked out pretty nicely, but it still wasn't a planeswalker. What time frame would you point this card as it came out of?
I would say that this is probably right before he decides to phase out Shiv and Zalfir. For the flavor text on it says, to save this plane, he must forsake all others. And,
I
well, I don't know, because
no.
that might
I
be...
think this is definitely pre-battle with Bolus.
Oh, right. No, because, yeah, he phased those out before battling Bolus. But when he says he must forsake all others, is that like when he closes the time streams and gives up his Planeswalker Spark?
Yep.
Okay. So
Yeah.
that would actually be after the battle with Bolus.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure this is after. This is the start of his life as a mortal.
Right. Now, might I interject here, because we all play Commander.
Did you play
and
Flash? Did you use
the
Flash?
prevalence of Vidalcan Orrery now, I mean, it's exploded. I mean, everyone seems to be playing their Vidalcan Orrery. And Teferi is definitely a nice counter to that. I mean, like you were saying, it's a lock piece. So everybody who tries to, board wipe on their opponent's turn or flash in stuff at the end of the last player's turn, this would definitely not allow them to do that. But you can.
Yeah, it's really cool. And then moving on, we have Teferi Temporal Archmage as a 4 generic blue Planeswalker Teferi. He also has 3 abilities. He is able to look at the top card of your 2 cards of your library, choose one to put there, and the other goes to the bottom of your library. Untaps 4 permanents, which is busted. And then he gets a time spell. Essentially, he gets an emblem that says you can activate loyalties of Planeswalkers instant speed. Yes, that does mean you can activate them on your opponent's turns, and you can activate on your turn and their turn. Still activate only once, but yeah, it's really good. He can also be your commander and enters with 5 loyalty. Now, I think this is after he trained at Talaria, but before he phased out and became a Royal Mage.
I think you're right. I love how with the creature and the Planeswalker card, you can essentially have any of your permanents activating and going off during anyone else's turn, just completely throwing off the concept of time in a game of Magic.
Yeah. I mean, he is a time mage, essentially.
Huge flavor win there with those cards, yes.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Could you imagine if Joyer became a Planeswalker?
Anything's possible. I mean, you were mentioning how cards like Jaya Ballard was constructed in the same way as Teferi, and we haven't really seen Jaya since the advent of Planeswalkers, and I'm not saying she is one.
We've seen her.
Well, okay, yes.
But not as a card yet.
Right. So
sorry.
Yeah, anyway, just going back to Teferi's history, you can see him as a young child in cards like Disruptive Student, which I actually loved running in a lot of decks back in the day, because his ability to, so for 2 and a blue, you get a 1/1 wizard. It's not legendary because I guess Teferi wasn't that well known yet. Tap to counter target spell unless its controller pays 1. So not an exact like Dahlia hate bear, because you can only use it once, but it really at the right time can put a thorn in your opponent's side when they're trying to cast spells. And the flavor text says, Teferi is a problem student, always late for class, no appreciation for constructive use of time. And that's Baron, his, I guess his professor or teacher?
Professor.
Right, so one of Baron's progress reports. And then as we move on, a couple other cards just, signifying his childhood, we get Confiscate, which is an enchantment aura for 4 blue. Enchant permanent, and you control enchanted permanent. And there's no flavor text, but you see in the picture here Urza sort of scolding, or maybe that's Baron, I'm not 100% sure, but he's scolding Teferi here, who's kind of like, what? I didn't do anything. And then I think you see Jora right behind him too. Just a kind of nice little picture of them at the academy back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the card Ovenize, this is good. For 1 and a blue.
Goats?
Sheep, actually. Or maybe it's been errated to goat. I'm not sure.
No, I think it's sheep.
Okay. Well, it says for 1 and a blue, you get an instant. Target creature loses all abilities and becomes a 0/1 until end of turn. And you see a little sheep there on the card. And the flavor text says, you wish for me to cow your enemies? I can do better than that. and Teferi's second level student.
Mm-hmm.
So up to his old antics and his tricks. Funny guy, that Teferi.
Yeah, he is.
And just a couple other cards referencing him as a student. We have Stern Protector. For blue, you get a wizard, a 1/2. When Stern Protector comes into play, return target artifact or enchantment to its owner's hand. And the flavor text says, I preferred the harsh tutors. They made mischief all the more fun. Teferi, third level student. And then rounding out the levels here, we have Telepathy, which is another favorite card of mine. For 1 blue, you get an enchantment that says your opponents play with their hands revealed. And the flavor text says, the most disappointing thing about learning telepathy is finding out how boring people really are. Teferi, 4th level student. So you get a real good flavor of his childhood, his tutelage at the academy, and what kind of person he was growing up.
Now in that telepathy art, is that Urza?
Ooh, I don't know. It could be.
It looks like an Urza.
He doesn't have any eyes. Or he has goggles on.
Because they're the Might and the Meek Stone?
Yep.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So. All right. Well, which cards did you want to talk about, Greg?
I mean, I'm going to kind of jump around here. I'm going to go down a list of things and talk about them. So the first one I'm going to talk about is Teferi's Moat. Now, if I remember correctly, this is when after the Wrathy overlay happens on the plane of Dominaria, and he is there helping Urza fight off the Phyrexians. Now, Teferi's Moat is one of the few cards that he's depicted in using his white mana.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's an enchantment for 3 generic white-blue, and when it enters the battlefield, you get to choose a color. And creatures of the chosen color without flying can't attack you.
And in the art, you can see across the moat, they're waving that Phyrexian banner in front of them. So absolutely fending off the Phyrexian army.
And then in his flavor text, it's isolation is not the answer. Urza to Teferi. So this is Urza kind of making a point to say, Teferi, don't leave us. We need you. You're really great. So this is definitely during the wars, but after the wars on Jamura.
Yeah.
Of course, we have Teferi's protection.
Yes.
How can I not talk about TP? This is after the war, where they culminated before the war, but they culminated the energy from the planar portals, and he phased out Shiv and Northern Jamura.
Yep.
We got my favorite card, Teferi's Puzzle Box.
Oh, God.
This card really just focuses on his mischievous nature and his artifice, how he likes to create things. And Teferi's Puzzle Box, if you do not know, I hope you do, is 4 generic, artifact, and it says at the beginning of each player's draw step, they put the cards in their hand on the bottom of their library and then draw that many cards. Now, I'm not sure when he made this. I think he could have made this as a Royal Mage of Zalfir and gifted it to the royalty, because that first art kind of shows somebody that looks royal playing with the puzzle box.
Oh, yeah.
But I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
Then a couple other neat cards. We got Teferi's Realm, which is a blue enchant world out of Visions. So it's a generic blue 3-drop. And at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player chooses artifacts, creatures, lands, or global enchantments, and all cards of that type phase out. Now, the flavor text has no real relevance to Teferi because it's taken from an actual book, but this is a really interesting card because you're able to say, these are not a part of the game this turn. And essentially, this is much like Teferi's Cure, where he phased out that entire island.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is him playing around with time, trying to figure it out.
I'll jump in here just for one real quick. The card Disrupt, for 1 blue, you get an instant that says counter target instant or sorcery spell unless its controller pays 1, and draw a card. And it shows a picture of Urza alongside Teferi trying to seal one of these portals Phyrexian portals here, and the flavor text says Teferi wanted no part of Urza's battle plans, but both agreed the Phyrexian portal must be closed. So you see the struggle, the realization after the fact that Teferi didn't want the same things Urza wanted, but is willing to help him fight to a point. Of course, that point being when he finally escaped and phased everything out against Urza's will. But you've got the allies and then him breaking off to do his own thing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Then I think this next card is one you should bring up. And this is Key.
Oh yeah, Care Keep. Just for the mere fact that its flavor text, again, is absolutely hilarious. But for those who might not know, Care Keep is a legendary land. You tap to add a colorless to your mana pool, and you can tap one in a red, tap it, put a 0/1 red kobold creature token named Kobolds of Care Keep onto the battlefield. And the flavor text says, "They're still here? The cockroach may have finally met its match, and that is Teferi." And I'm assuming that's after he returns to Dominaria and sees that the kobolds in Carekeep have in fact survived the obliteration of the plane.
yeah, it's kind of funny. All right, the next card that I like is Magus of the Candelabra.
Ooh,
and
yeah.
This is a really cool card because it's just a 1 green 1/2 that says tap X, tap it, and untap X target lands. It's really cool. But the flavor text is what's really cool here. Now, this is definitely after the 400-year seclusion of Jamura from Dominaria, his return to the time stream with Joyer bringing back Shiv and Jamura. And it says, what would Urza think? I wonder if he could hear how the nature mages still snarl at his name, but venerate the work of his apprentice, Teferi to Joyra. So what it is there was a card called Candelabra of Tawnos, which did the same thing, but as an artifact. And it was created by Tawnos, who believed that there was a balance between artifice and nature. And, of course, Urza is like, no, artifice. I don't care about nature. I'm going to save the plane through artifice. Everything needs to be artificed. So it's kind of an interesting take on how they're poking fun at Urza.
Right.
So I've got one that I'm wondering, what time frame do you think this is?
Okay.
The card is Paradox Haze, 2 generic and a blue, enchantment
Ooh, good
aura.
card.
It enchants a player. And when it says at the beginning of an enchanted player's first upkeep each turn, so on their turns, they get an additional upkeep step. It's kind of cool. 2 upkeeps. And then the flavor text says, keep your pace steady through the haze, lest you step on the heels of your future self or trip the self a moment behind you, Teferi.
Okay, well, this looks like it's kind of taken place. Obviously, he's referencing multiple time frames. I don't know. I would have to say that this probably, again, takes place when they're on Teferi's Isle doing some of his experiments. Possibly before he completely phased everything out.
I think this is way after, before the battle with Nicol Bolas. Because
really?
this feels like perfected time magic, not unstable time magic.
That is true, and there are bones on the ground, so it would signify that there's some sort of a battle being waged here.
Yeah. Hard one to say, for sure.
Absolutely. And then I also like Essence Leak, which is for 1 blue, you get an enchant permanent. And it says, if enchanted permanent is red or green, it has, at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice this permanent unless you pay its mana cost. But I love, again, the flavor text when it says, we define the boundaries of reality. They don't define us, said by Teferi, which really sort of encapsulates his views of time and his magic ability, and just awesome. I love how he puts those kinds of things in perspective.
All right, I'm going to move on to another card. We got Reality Ripple. Instant, colorless and a blue. It says target artifact, creature, or land phases out. Easy as that. The flavor text says, can you prepare for the unexpected? No, you cannot. You can prepare only to be surprised. Teferi. I'm pretty sure this is when he phases out that island in the Raza Islands.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. kind of cool to have reference to the story. You got any other cards you want to talk about?
I'll talk about one more, just real quick. The card Vanishing, which is from Visions again. It's a 1 blue enchant creature or aura, and you can tap blue to have enchanted creature phase out. But again, Teferi's quote on the bottom: "Careless like a child with fire, so was I with time." So we see him growing from being the disruptive student to being the temporal archmage, and just dabbling in things that are just far beyond his comprehension. Ultimately, he became much better at it, but when you deal with time and you're not 100% sure of what's going on, you do things like create time bubbles and humongous explosions, which, necessitate things like the mending. So, yeah, just tons and tons of crazy repercussions for his experiments, and Urza kind of goading him to do a lot of this stuff. But either way, I find Teferi to be an extremely interesting character and a pivotal piece in Magic's history and lore. So hopefully, with all this, that we brought to you today, kind of shed some light on the character and the story. In going and doing some of this research, because I didn't actually read the books, I just kind of looked up stuff, and again, a lot of this information that we're getting is from Gamepedia.com. But just reading through the story, you see all these different characters and how they link and interact. Because, again, I started playing when I was very young, and I knew these cards, but I didn't really pay much attention to the story. So now that I'm kind of going through and uncovering it all, I'm having all these aha moments where I'm like, what? Yeah. I didn't know that, this was related to that or something like that. So it's so awesome. And we love bringing these episodes to you guys, and we look forward to doing this again in the future. Was there anything else you wanted to mention about Teferi's story or time streams or anything like that?
Ultimately, I'm just excited to have the possibility of seeing Joyra and Teferi possibly in their old age on Dominaria in the next set. I have a feeling they are both alive and ticking. I'm just kind of excited for it.
Yeah, well, we could see not even necessarily an old Teferi.
I know.
We might.
He does have the ability to manipulate time, so he could be not old. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, I find it absolutely amazing that he could get completely disembodied, decapitated, and then kind of piece himself back together.
Yeah, that was really kind of a cool part of that story.
I had to read that like 5 times over before I realized just what they were talking about, because I'm like, wait, he dies? No, he doesn't. But Bolas is holding his head, and he's talking to him. Like, what's going on?
That's a god-level planeswalker for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. Well, that will wrap it up for us for our story on Teferi. And I think that might bring us up to the end of this episode, Greg, unless there was anything else you wanted to talk about.
No, go out and get your Black Friday promos, buy your boxes if you would like.
Exactly.
Share them with us. Where can they share that with us?
Well, you can share that with us on Twitter, and we are at The Win Condition on Twitter. I am at MTG_Sean.
And I am at NoobSlasher2003.
And if you're wondering where you want to get all your Magic products at, you can go to Flipside Gaming at flipsidegaming.com, where you can order any Magic singles, any sealed product. Like you said, Explorers of Ixalan coming out on Friday.
From the Vault Transform.
From the Vault Transform, yes. An Iconic Masters has been out for about a week now.
Yep.
And the holidays are coming up, so presents for others, presents for yourself, whatever your, pleasure may be. But head on over to Flipside, use that promo code WINCONDITION in all caps to get 10% off of your purchase, which proceeds will go to help fund us on our future show giveaways. And we'll put a link in the show notes to our YouTube channel. Go and check that out. You can email us at thewinconditionpodcast@gmail.com. And all that being said, Greg, thanks again.
Oh, of course, anytime. I mean, we're doing this on Thanksgiving.
Yep, happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy
Go out and eat some turkey.
Enjoy, guys.
All right, and we will talk to y'all next week.